Welcome to a special edition of ITV News Meridian as I join veterans on the beaches of Normandy, 70 years on from D-Day. Today, memories of what became known as the longest day. The Queen, senior royals and world leaders have been with our veterans to remember the start of the Allied liberation of Europe.
I'm at the headquarters of Supreme Allied Command, where the D-Day invasion was planned. A little later, we shall be talking exclusively to two brothers who fought side by side on the second front as they tell us how they survived when others didn't. They're just one of the remarkable stories, eyewitnesses on history, if you like, that we'll be recounting over the course of this programme. The whole incredible events coordinated here in the map room of Southwick House in Hampshire on June the 6th, 1944.
Hello and welcome to Normandy, where exactly 70 years ago one of the biggest military operations in world history took place. More than 130,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches behind me. A further 26,000 had parachuted in behind enemy lines for D-Day, the longest day. They'd set off from ports and airfields in southern England. Operation Overlord, as it was codenamed, was years in the planning, designed to liberate Europe and bring World War II to an end. Well, despite being in their 80s and 90s, there are hundreds of D-Day veterans and they've made the journey back here to remember what they did and the friends they lost at cemeteries in Normandy. They've been joined by the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh and world leaders, including David Cameron, President Obama, President Putin, and of course Francois Hollande. They're all here to recognise the invaluable contributions the veterans made. Well, as we speak this evening, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Kate and William, are here on Gold Beach in Arromanches, where I'm standing, for a tea party organised by the Normandy Veterans Association. Huge crowds are here for them, but Kate and William are here for the veterans, one of many events to recognise these extraordinary men. With more now, here's Derek Johnson on The Hero's Return.
The Queen, senior royals, the great, the good and those who served, united in silence to remember soldiers far from home but close to people's hearts. Others who made it through and made it here have been marching once more. Surrey veterans on parade in Arromanches, raising the flag of their association. The group will soon disband. They grow very old, the memories do not. You must be one of the oldest D-Day veterans at 99, 100 next month.
That's right. I think I am, brother.
And how does it feel being back here?
Well, absolutely fabulous. As I said, it's like being back home. It's, you know.
Left, right, left, right.
Always talk about memories being fresh and raw. Does it really bring it home when you come back?
Oh, we definitely. And see, I have 3 chaps buried in Homerville Cemetery, and every time I come, I always lay a cross on each one of those, every time. One of them I knew very well.
Away from the veterans and the important events, thousands have come out onto the streets of towns and villages in Normandy, celebrating this day, but also remembering the men who, while defining their own futures, shaped our destiny too.
It's important for old people and even for young people to know what's happened.
You're about to join, hopefully, the US Marine Corps.
We have a house about 40 minutes away, so we come here every summer and, you know, we come and remember all the lives that lost.
Arromanches was a British beach, full today, the crowd providing colour, the reenactors, not all of them welcomed by the real fighters, at least giving some idea of what things would have looked like on that day. Some have chosen to stay away from the big high security events, but the presence of generations of the royal family is appreciated. Historians say they should be in Normandy.
Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are here. They are part of the wartime generation. They both served during the war. And I think it's incredibly important for the veterans, that they are here.
The feeling is this is an anniversary like no other before it.
This is the last one. If they come again, they'll only come on their own, and it's not quite the same. And they love to come. It's a funny word to say, but they love to come just to honour the friends and colleagues that have died.
Will you be coming back? Would you all want to come back?
Yeah, I'd like to come back again. But we can't tell the future, can we? Yeah.
As long as Dad's in good health, I will definitely make sure he returns next year.
Yeah.
Amid a sometimes carnival atmosphere, the grief is still there for many veterans. June the 6th is their day, and always will be. Derek Johnson, ITV News, Arromanches.
Even today, the veterans have such spirit. There was great concern in Sussex today when an 89-year-old man by the name of Bernard Jordan went missing from his care home. But I'm pleased to say that he's turned up safe and well here in Normandy, and he's definitely in safe hands. Well, two more amazing men now. They're both in their 90s, they're both from Kent, and they're both brothers in arms. And they served on the same warship here on D-Day. Johnny and Ernie, you're here to remember your fallen comrades, but you've also just been given some medals by the French authorities.
That was entirely unexpected.
It is an appreciative medal, and at least I've got something to leave. And it was a good ceremony.
Let me take you back to that day, 70 years ago. You were 24, you were 20. What do you remember about it?
Well, I can't remember a lot about it because I was one of those people that worked from the bottom of the ship and not the top. But he was seeing all the action, and I was hearing it all down below. Thinking back, I would say that being down below, I think I ought to be grateful for that.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see anything to be afraid of.
What were you hearing? It's HMS Frobisher that you were on.
We were aircraft direction, and it was just a lot of noise. We moved in an hour or two before our troops stormed the beaches to try and take out all the German defences, which I think we did manage some of them, so it helped to make it a bit easier.
Was it unusual for two brothers to be on the same?
Very unusual. We couldn't communicate with each other, and if anything happened as we were bombed, and when that happened it was difficult to get news through.
The only time I was worried was when we was actually hit.
We lost 9 people then. One of the biggest worries, of course, our mother, with 2 people on the ship.
And today you're the oldest surviving brothers from D-Day.
So we believe.
Which means that I was lucky then and I'm lucky now.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to meet you both.
Yeah.
Thank you very
That's
much.
Nice of you to say that. Thank you.
It really was a pleasure to meet Ernie and Johnny, and they want you to know that they're lifelong Charlton Athletic fans. That's the least I could do for 2 lovely veterans. Well, they, along with so many thousands of others, made such a huge difference to the world that we now live in today, and they were only able to do their bit because of the meticulous planning that was taking place on the south coast. With more on that, it's Fred.
Yes, indeed, Sangeeta. Thank you very much indeed. I'm in the map room here at Southwark House near Portsmouth, the secret headquarters of the Supreme Allied Command. Behind me, this is it. This is the D-Day map showing the sheer scale of the Armada crossing the Channel to free France from the Nazis. 25,000 airborne troops set off from places like RAF Tarrant Rushton in Dorset. First to be dispatched, the Ox and Bucks Light Infantry, who flew from Dorset to capture key targets a few miles inland. 6 hours later, the massive invasion fleet set sail. British, Canadian and American troops boarded ships at Weymouth, Southampton, Portsmouth, Shoreham and Newhaven, and other points along the coast. The target, 5 beaches along a 50-mile stretch of Normandy. They and the airborne troops all with the same aim, securing a foothold in occupied Europe. They headed south to Normandy and the beaches whose code words are now legend: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno and Sword. Joined now by curator at Southwick House, Matthew Wood. Matthew, every time you see this map, it sends a tingle down your spine. Last time I saw it, covered in glass, but not now.
That's right, we had to take the glass down. It was just getting too warm in there, so warm it was peeling the paint. So we've taken the glass off, it's now in a stable environment. Describe this historic room in the days leading up to D-Day. Well, it would have been a lot busier than it is today. There would have been officers, wrens all over. They would have been hunched over maps all over the walls, on tables, and this map as well. And of course, everyone would have smoked as well. Pipes, cigars, cigarettes. The room would have just had a fog all around it all the time.
And the future for this map, what happens to it?
Well, it's in safe hands now. It's looked after by 2 curators. It's owned by the Ministry of Defence, so it's paid for by the taxpayers and it's accessible to the public.
This map, of course, built by a toy firm, Chad Valley, in Birmingham. The 2 gentlemen who bought it down here thought they were going straight back home. That didn't happen, though, did it?
No, unfortunately, they became 2 civilians to know the rough location of the D-Day landing, so they were politely told to make themselves comfortable. They won't be going home until September 1944.
Extraordinary. What a story. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, our D-Day coverage continues on our website with Prince William and Kate, who've been with the veterans this afternoon. We also have a roundup of the day's events in Normandy with archive and the day's pictures as the Queen and world leaders joined thousands of people as they gathered to pay their own tributes. All our news, stories and special features, of course, on itv.com/news/Meridian. Joined here now at Southwick House by David Eisenhower, grandson of Dwight D. Eisenhower. What does it mean to you to be here today?
It means everything. This is, for the people who are with us today, this is an historic site. This is Wellington's headquarters on the night before Waterloo, one of the most historic sites in the entire world. That's what it means for all of us, but for me personally, these are the decisive hours of my grandfather's life.
What are your memories of your grandfather?
He was very energetic. He was a very determined person, very intelligent, above all fair. He impressed me with the qualities that I think are necessary in command and military and so forth. He was somebody who expected of others what he expected of himself, and he was a natural leader and somebody that, frankly, I pinched myself knowing.
And he changed the course of history.
The men, soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, and he was part of that, changed the course of history. There's no question about that, and this week has definitely demonstrated that. We have countries around the world converging on this region. We have 19 sovereigns at the D-Day commemorations this year, and that's far more than ever before, including Russians and Germans. Everybody touched by World War II have settled on D-Day as the focal point.
Good to meet you, sir. Enjoy the rest of your visit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, quite rightly, we have been talking about the fighting men of Normandy and the battles they had to endure. But what about the women? Because, of course, many women were also involved. Some here at Southwick House in Hampshire, others, of course, over the Channel in Normandy. Our reporter, Nashreen Issa, has been talking to some of them.
A short time ago, the first batch of 24 girls to arrive in France stepped from their landing craft onto the beaches of Normandy to take up clerical duties on the Western Front.
Less than a month after D-Day, while fighting still raged in the coastal towns, the women of the British Army arrived. Among them, in July 1944, Celia Osborne from Eastbourne, 90 now and with military maps that also chart her journey through occupied Europe. It began when she and 200 others boarded a troopship in Southampton, an event noteworthy enough to merit a photo in a national newspaper.
It was a shock to the captain when we arrived, and she put her foot down and wasn't going to let us go on the ship. But as the ship captain said, well, there's only one ship, so that's it. She wanted us separated from the men, yes.
This is Celia on the D-Day beaches at Courcelles. The women's arrival, unexpected, to say the least.
Mostly it was men staring at us. We just got into the lorries and went off to the camp.
Camp life is no new experience for them. The smooth establishment comes from efficient training.
The camp was a series of makeshift tents that formed offices for the clerks and typists.
Open-air office work. They start in quickly on the job.
All like Celia, volunteers from the ATS, the Auxiliary Territorial Service.
It was very difficult at times because the papers kept blowing away. But yes, we had the whole office with typewriters and everything like that in the tents.
Those in the armed forces and of course nurses in field hospitals were often close to the front line and the bombing.
Normandy was still being bombed at that stage, and shells, and they came most nights. We were there in Normandy about 3 months, I think. Then we went in troop ships to Brussels, where we did get a hero's welcome all the way through. They were really very, very delighted, but very surprised. It was women, and if we stopped, they came around and brought flowers and fruit.
The role that women played in the landings is sometimes overlooked. 70 years on, it's right to remember them as well as the fighting men of D-Day. Nasha Nissa, ITV News.
Well, the biggest challenge facing when D-Day should take place wasn't in fact Adolf Hitler and his army, it was the weather. Originally it was planned for June the 5th, but there was a nasty gale whipping up the channel. A little later, Simon Parkin will explain the role the weather played in the whole invasion. And don't forget, this was the time before satellites and computers. That's later. Now though, let's rejoin Sangeeta in France.
Well, no concerns about the weather here today. I'm pleased to say I'm now joined by the Surrey chairman of the Normandy Veterans Association, Mr. Peter Thompson. Mr. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us here today. D-Day is a special day for you because it's your birthday.
It is.
Many happy returns.
Thank you very much.
Now, you were 19 when you arrived here.
Yeah.
What were your memories of that day?
Well, it's pretty horrific because we were anxious. Everybody asked me if we were frightened, but we wasn't frightened because we'd done a lot of training and that sort of, but we were very apprehensive about what's going to happen to it. We didn't expect it, what happened, we didn't sort of expect that because I've never been in action before and never seen it, you know.
And you had lots of wounded soldiers on board, didn't you, on your ship?
We unloaded the tanks and that sort of thing, which took a couple of hours, and then the rest of the time ambulances used to arrive on the beach, and they brought on 500 badly wounded soldiers, and we took them in, and we had 24 medics and 3 surgeons on board. And the medics carried them on the stretchers, and the surgeons operated on the way back.
Well, so many people are here for the 70th D-Day commemorations, and you have said yourself that this could be the last time we see a gathering on this scale. Being here, is it more poignant?
Oh, it's really heartbreaking, you know, the association packing up. The Surrey branch, actually, we made arrangements with the mess at Purbright. We're not breaking up completely, we're not, Surrey branch, but the National Council is breaking up, the National Association of Normandy Vets.
So briefly, will we see something on this scale again?
Yes, not like this, no, not this scale. I shan't live that long anyway, but you might do when I've gone.
Mr. Thompson, it's your birthday. Good thoughts. Thank you so much for talking to us. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, D-Day wasn't just a huge military operation, it was an engineering marvel as well. If you look behind me, you can see some of the 2 million tonnes of concrete and steel that had to be towed across the English Channel. You see, when the Allied forces arrived here, they had no harbour to land reinforcements and crucial supplies, so they had no choice but to build their own. It was called Mulberry Harbour, as David Wood now explains.
This is what's left of the huge artificial harbour. It was built in Britain and towed across the channel. The clumps of concrete were connected with the aim of landing troops and offloading supplies as quickly as possible as soon as the beaches had been won. The harbour was so secret that even the soldiers tasked with putting it together had no idea what they were looking at.
We saw them coming over those massive concrete blocks, and we didn't know what the devil they were. And of course, like everything, rumours start. And it was one of the rumours was going to be put together and we were going to live on them. Another one, they were going to be all put together and it's going to be landing for aircraft, and you know, things like that.
This is what's left of the harbour here at Arromanches. There were two in total, one for the Americans and one for the British. Together they helped land more troops, supplies and weapons in the weeks that followed D-Day. And together they are one of the most impressive feats of engineering of this or any other war. The original Mulberry plans are kept here at the Royal Engineers Museum in Gillingham.
It was a huge endeavour. Almost every dockyard in the whole country was involved in building small sections of the harbours. The key thing is that it was so top secret that no one had an overall view other than the real high authorities in the army. And so you'd be building a tiny bit of caisson or pierhead and you wouldn't see the whole picture until it was actually put in place in Normandy.
The late Alan Beckett designed Mulberry's remarkable floating roadways.
He was certainly very proud of the achievement. He was proud of its, the success. Churchill was not willing to authorise Operation Overlord without artificial harbours. So without Mulberry, there would have been no landings and probably no liberation of Europe.
But the harbours were just one scheme to keep the army moving. Two pipelines, between them stretching 280 miles, ran along the seabed and onto land, from the Isle of Wight to Cherbourg. 6 more pipelines stretching 500 miles ran from Dungeness to Boulogne. Pluto and Dumbo, as they were known, kept the tanks and trucks moving as the Allies broke out of Normandy and headed for Berlin. The American harbour sank in a storm, but the British one kept working for many months. The pieces are all monuments to the miracle of Mulberry. David Wood, ITV News, Arromanches.
Well, Simon Parkin has joined me now here live in the map room at Southwark House. And Simon, the Mulberry Harbour absolutely essential to protect our shipping because the weather was crucial, wasn't it?
Well, of course, conditions had to be just right for the mission to be a success. And General Eisenhower and top meteorological man James Stagg were under a great deal of pressure about when to launch the invasion. Now, the actor David Haig has written a play which is called Pressure, and it's currently on at the Minerva Theatre in Chichester, and it revolves around the great tension between the two men 70 years ago in this very room.
Stagg, what in hell is going on? Jesus H. Christ, I want to know now. Was the forecast you gave us the view of the British and American forecasters? Answer the goddamn question!
It was the view of the Allied Meteorological Unit.
David, we've long known the story of how important the weather forecast for D-Day was. When did you decide it would make a great play?
About 2.5 years ago, when the director, John Dove, rang me up and said, have you ever heard of James Stagg? And I fully confess I hadn't at the time, and I started researching him and found this story of an unsung hero absolutely captivating.
And Stagg was tasked with providing the weather for the Americans and the British, and back then it must have been exceptionally hard to forecast the weather.
Incredibly hard. I mean, the phrase, the jet stream, had only been coined in 1939. And this was Stagg's great thing, that the upper air was actually defining the weather at the surface, and therefore the storms in the Atlantic were moving far more powerfully and more rapidly than other people thought. And the Americans were basing all their weather forecasting on ancient charts of 100 years ago of weather in similar situations, And anybody who knows British or Northern European weather knows that it is volatile, erratic, and you certainly can't base it on the past. It's going to do what it likes,
And so there was this rivalry between Stagg and Colonel Crick.
Yes.
Did you have to increase the tension for the play, or was it really?
Oh, the tension was absolutely there. Stagg and A few of the other men believed it was going to be foul weather, that it would probably cause the death of 60 or 70,000 men crossing in these flat-bottomed landing craft. And Crick and the Americans thought it was going to be a glorious sunny day.
Over the last 2 years, Crick has saved thousands of lives because of his forecast. Again and again, he gets it right.
Finally, Stagg's forecast won the day, and Eisenhower postponed for 24 hours. And then Stagg has another moment of genius, which is he looks at the next chart and he notices a storm off Newfoundland is slowing down, which provides this gap of 8 hours on the following day. So he goes back to Eisenhower and says, I know I told you to postpone yesterday, but tomorrow if you go, you'll be okay, and the rest is history.
You used the words unsung hero. Do you think it's sad that he perhaps hasn't had the accolades he deserves?
I think it is very sad.
And do you think that because you're doing the play, you are just shedding that light on a man who deserves to be remembered?
Well, I hope so. I really hope that he will be remembered, and that we'll just redress the balance slightly. I mean, you can't shift history with a play in the Minerva Theatre, but you can have a go at redressing the balance slightly.
To every single man crossing the English Channel tonight, God be with them.
God be with them indeed. Perfect weather then today for the 70th anniversary of D-Day. Will it last over the weekend for the many more events still to come? Let's find out now with Simon Parkin.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France. Here we are on La Plage.
Driving to Europe, Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, today has been a very nice day, but tonight things do go downhill. We start off dry and it'll stay warm as well. Temperatures no lower than around 16, 17 degrees. Quite a muggy feeling night, but the cloud is thickening up, and after midnight we'll see some showers push in from the southwest. They are heavy, thundery downpours. They'll be with us through tomorrow as well. A Met Office warning in place because we could see more than an inch of rain falling in a short space of time, so there is a risk of some localised flooding. But showers are hit and miss. You might miss out, or if one lands on you, you'll certainly know about it. But through the afternoon, they should start to ease off. We'll see things turn drier and brighter, and that's when temperatures will shoot up. A late high of maybe 24 Celsius. That's 75 in Fahrenheit. Now, your high tide times tomorrow, you can see on the Isle of Wight, 10 past 6 in the morning, 10 to 7 in the evening, and then Sunday, a much better day. Still a chance of an odd shower, but a lot of dry and fine and warm weather too.
Eurotunnel Le Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
The Pollen Count, sponsored by Checkatrade.com.
Checkatrade.com.
Well, thanks to this glorious weather, the pollen levels today are already very high. But through tomorrow, thanks to those showers, we will see them drop down to low. Through the weekend, they'll be high when it's sunny, low if it's wet.
Well, that's all from Southwick House near Portsmouth, where in June 1944, a group of men led by the Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower had to make a decision that would affect the fate of tens of thousands of troops and the fate of a free Europe. They had to decide whether and when to launch the D-Day invasion. Thankfully for us all, they got their decision absolutely right.
They certainly did. Today is all about the veterans, those who fought on these beaches, willing to sacrifice themselves for our freedom. D-Day belongs to them just as much as it did 17 years ago. From everyone here in Normandy, good night.